Hello, my sweet summer children. I'm back with the juice. So we are continuing House of the Dragon preparations, and you really can't talk about House of the Dragon or House Targaryen without discussing the most loyal house to House Targaryen, House Grey Area. Just kidding, House Velaryon. House Velaryon is a great house of Westeros. It still exists. It plays a part in the book series A Song of Ice and Fire, but it didn't make Game of Thrones for some reason. Anyway, House Velaryon is a legendary house of Westeros who came to Westeros from Old Valyria before the Doom and even before House Targaryen, settling on the largest island in the Blackwater Bay called DriftMark. DriftMark is west of Dragonstone and is named for the driftwood that washes up on its shores daily, with the Targaryens ruling the skies with their dragons and the Valyrians ruling the sea with their ships. The Valyrian and Targaryen alliance has stood for generations. It is House Velaryon who often provided the bulk of the royal fleet. On the King's Council, so many Velaryons served as Lord Admiral and Master of Ships that it was, at times, almost considered a hereditary office. The DriftMark and Dragonstone alliance predates the written history that we have. We do know that House Targaryen oft calls on men and women from House Velaryon for wives and husbands. They have the blood of old Valyria after all. Silver hair with eyes shades of purple, lilac, and indigo. We don't know when the loyalty began or why. But we do know House Velaryon was by Aegon's side during the conquest. They were by Rhaenyra's side during the Dance of Dragons. And I have no doubt when Daenerys Targaryen shows up on the shores of Westeros with her 3 dragons, DriftMark will flock to their rightful queen. The Lord of DriftMark carries the title Lord of the Tides. While Lords of DriftMark have risen and fallen with such tides, none have been as legendary as Corlys Velaryon, the Sea Snake. But to go forward, we must go back. During the reign of Jahereys Targaryen, the Conciliator, in the year of 53 AC, a baby was born to the eldest son of the Lord of DriftMark, Daemon Velaryon. They named the baby boy Corlys Velaryon after his great uncle who had served as the first Lord Commander of the Kingsguard under Aegon the Conqueror. It was traditional for sons of the Seahorse. The Seahorse is actually the sigil of House Velaryon. It was traditional for their sons to be given a taste of seafarer's life when young, but no Valyrian before or ever took to shipboard life as eagerly as the boy who would become the Sea Snake. He first crossed the narrow sea at the age of 6, sailing to Pentos with his uncle. Thereafter, Corlys made such voyages every year, and he didn't travel as a passenger. He climbed masts, tied knots, scrubbed decks, pulled oars, caulked leaks, raised and lowered sails, manned the crow's nest, learned to navigate and steer. His captains would say they had never seen such a natural sailor. At 16, he became a captain himself, taking a fishing boat called the Cod Queen from DriftMark to Dragonstone and back. In the years that followed, his ships grew larger and swifter, his voyages longer and more dangerous. He took ships around the bottom of Westeros to visit Old Town, Lannisport, and Lordsport on Pike. He sailed to Lys, Tyrosh, Pentos, and Myr. He took the Summer Maid to Volantis and the Summer Isles. And he took his ship, the Ice Wolf, north to Braavos, to Eastwatch by the Sea and Hardhome, before turning to the Shivering Sea towards Larath and the port of Ibn. He also took the Ice Wolf north once more, searching for the rumored passage around the top of Westeros, but finding only frozen seas and icebergs as big as mountains. His most famous voyages were those he made on the ship he designed and built himself called the Sea Snake. Corlys went beyond Qarth, passing through the Jade Gates to Yi-Ti. Yi-Ti is a large and diverse country, a realm of windswept plains and rolling hills, jungles and rainforests, deep lakes and rushing rivers, and shrinking inland seas. Its legendary wealth is such as to allow its princes to live in houses of solid gold and dine on sweet meats powdered with pearls and jade. Corlys would also visit the Isles of Lang. He returned with a load so rich with silk and spice and other treasures that he doubled the wealth of House Velaryon. On his second voyage on the Sea Snake, he sailed even further, to a shy by the shadow. On his third, he tried the Shivering Sea instead, becoming the first Westerosi to navigate the Thousand Islands and visit the bleak cold shores of Nagai and Masavi. The ninth and final voyage on the Sea Snake, Sir Corlys took her back to Qarth, laden with enough gold to buy 20 more ships and load them all with saffron, pepper, nutmeg, elephants, and bolts of the finest silk. Only 14 of that fleet arrived safely to DriftMark, and all the elephants died at sea. Yet even still, the profits from this voyage were so vast that the Velyrians became the wealthiest house in the Seven Kingdoms, eclipsing both the Hightowers and the Lannisters, at least for a little while. Corlys's grandfather Daemon died at age 88, and his seat passed to Corlys. Corls Velayron, the Sea Snake, was now Lord of the Tides. Because Castle Driftmark was always flooded and dank and damp, the Sea Snake decided to build him a new castle, High Tide. High Tide was built of all pale stone, the same pale stone that the Eyrie is made from. Its slender towers crowned with roofs of beaten silver that flashed in the sun. When the morning and evening tides rolled in, the castle was completely surrounded by the sea, connected to Driftmark proper only by a causeway. Lord Corlys would move his family's ancient driftwood throne from Castle Driftmark to High Tide. He built ships as well. The royal fleet tripled in size during the years he served the old king as master of ships. The old King Jahereys was on his royal procession to Highgarden, and he was joined by his eldest granddaughter, Princess Rhaenys. She had flown to his side on Meleys, the Red Queen. Together they visited the Shield Islands. It was on Green Shield that she told her grandfather of her plans to marry, and she received the king's blessing. "You could not have chosen a better man," he said. And that is a true testament to the Sea Snake. Rhaenys was the daughter of Jahereys and Alyssanne's firstborn son, Aemon, and his wife, Lady Jocelyn Baratheon. She had the black hair of her Baratheon mother and the violet eyes of her Targaryen father. She was fierce, and she should have been queen. Some call her the queen that never was. Of this relationship between Rhaenys and Corlys, much is said. "Only you could have won me away from the sea," he told the princess. "I came back to the ends of the earth for you. We can go back to the ends of the earth together," she promised. "But I'll get there first, because I'll be on a dragon." While Rhaenys was pregnant with her first child, her father, heir to the Iron Throne, died. The Sea Snake and Rhaenys had 2 children, their eldest a son, Laenor Velaryon, and their youngest a daughter, Laena Velaryon. But times were changing, and a rift was growing between Driftmark and King's Landing. Princess Rhaenys was the daughter of Aemon, the heir to the Iron Throne, and upon his death, she should have become the new heir. But she was a woman, so that title was given to her father's younger brother, Balon the Brave. But when Balon followed his brother into the grave, the old King Jahereys did not know how to handle the succession of the throne. The old king heeded his maester's advice and had a great council, the Great Council of 101. The 2 primary participants were Viserys, the eldest son of Balon the Brave, and not Rhaenys, but the son of Rhaenys. Rhaenys and Corlys' son, Laenor Velaryon. I'm going to do a separate video on the Great Council, but the ruling named Viserys the heir. And that set a precedent that a son must always come before a daughter. This was a slap in the face to House Velaryon. Lord Corlys was a man apart, fierce, strong, but he was not without faults. The passing over of his son's birthright on some bullshit pretense caused the Sea Snake to hold a grudge towards the Iron Throne. I really don't even think he's wrong about that. Anyway, the king and his council conveyed on this important matter: who should wed Rhaenyra. And it was decided that a political match be made. This political match would bring Driftmark back to the side of House Targaryen. Rhaenyra would marry Sir Corlys Velaryon's son, Laenor. However, it was rumored that Laenor was gay, and Rhaenyra was not happy about the match, but she did as she was bid, and she wed Sir Laenor on Driftmark. So rumors swirled, whispers that their marriage wasn't a consummated one. Nonetheless, Rhaenyra had her first son, Jahereys Velaryon, Jace for short, and he didn't look Valyrian. All of her following children by Sir Laenor didn't look Valyrian either. Jaehaerys, Lucerys, and Joffrey were all born with brown hair and brown eyes, even though their alleged father had silver hair and purple eyes, and so did their mother. So Corlys didn't seem to mind or care. As the rumors swirled, not many listened except for the Greens. Sir Corlys would spend some time warring in the steppe zones with Prince Daemon Targaryen, but also Daemon had noticed his beautiful daughter, and he would marry her. Daemon married Laena Velaryon, and they had twin girls, Baela and Rhaena. Laenor Velaryon would die, and so would Laena, and not even a year later, Daemon and Rhaenyra would marry and have 2 sons of their own. And on came the Dance of Dragons. So the Sea Snake fought with Rhaenyra, plotted with Rhaenyra, and supported the Blacks 100%. He brought her the fleet of DriftMark, and his bastards rode dragons for her into war, if the tales can be believed. He won a victory in the Battle of the Gullet, but suffered a huge loss of ships and damages to DriftMark. His wife died fighting for Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra did end up naming Corlys her Hand of the Queen, but she ended up throwing him in a dungeon for warning Sir Adam that Rhaenyra was coming to kill him. Later, he bent his knee to Queen Alysannne, but not as you would think. A clever man was still plotting. He wanted to amend the 7 kingdoms, and his idea was to name Aegon III, Rhaenys' son by Daemon, to Jaheira, Aegon II's daughter. Sir Corlys plotted with Larys Clubfoot and the Flea and the others to poison King Aegon II and place Aegon III on the throne. But when Lord Cragen Stark came down from Winterfell, he named himself Hand of the King and called the killing of the usurper high treason and threw the Sea Snake in a dungeon. But Prince Aegon had other feelings. The prince pardoned the Sea Snake and restored him to his lands and titles and a place on the council. Cragen did not have to agree to this, but he did agree. Lord Corlys would serve as regent to Aegon III until his death, and it was said that the Sea Snake was the only man that King Aegon III ever trusted. In 132 AC, Lord Corlys collapsed on the serpentine steps of the Red Keep. He was 79 years old, and I am not convinced that this wasn't murder, but that's a tale for another day. He had served 4 kings and a queen, sailed to the ends of the earth, raised House Velaryon to unprecedented wealth and power, married a princess who should have been a queen, fathered dragon riders, built towns and fleets, proved his valor in times of war and wisdom in times of peace. The 7 kingdoms would never see his like again. He was laid beneath the Iron Throne for 7 days, and then he was carried back to DriftMark aboard the Mermaid's Kiss. There he was sent to sea one last time on his famous ship, the Sea Snake. They placed his body aboard and floated it out to the deep waters east of Dragonstone. Corlys was buried at sea, and it says, as the Sea Snake started to sink beneath the waves, the last wild dragon of House Targaryen, the infamous cannibal, swept overhead, his great black wings spread in a last salute. And so do legendary men die. The Sea Snake is one of my favorite characters in the entire history of Westeros. I love him, literally zaddy. But what do you think of the Sea Snake? As always, thanks for watching. Thanks to everyone that supports me on Patreon. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please click that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and join the Sweet Summer family. Okay, my sweet summer children, have a good day.